This is Sunday School Choice, where faith meets education freedom.
Well, welcome everyone. My name is Nathan Sanders, and I'm with EdChoice. And the show that you are watching, this podcast you're watching, is called Sunday School Choice, where faith meets education freedom. This is a new podcast series that we're working on, that we're doing to have conversations with folks about the church and the faith community and how that relates to education freedom. So there's lots of conversations to be had, lots of interesting stuff to talk about. But today, I am joined by a very special guest, Dr. Doug Ritchie. Dr. Ritchie, I will let him introduce himself a bit in just a second, but Dr. Ritchie is a former lawmaker in the state of Missouri, and he's also a former pastor at a church in Missouri. And so he has lots of experience, not only on the policy side and the lawmaking side, but as a pastor and shepherding a church and how that relates to school choice and how churches can benefit and expand their ministry with school choice. And so we're super excited to jump into this conversation today. And so welcome, Dr. Ritchie. We're happy to have you.
Thank you, Nathan. It's wonderful to be a part. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Likewise, I'm as well. We're going to jump right into it. We're going to waste no time. So Dr. Ritchie, tell us about how you got into the world of both lawmaking and pastoring. What inspired you to both be a pastor and be a lawmaker? Both of those professions are oftentimes respectively. And so what inspired you to get into those worlds? What inspired you to get into those roles? And we'd love to hear about your experience.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I have 26 years of pastoral ministry behind me. I love that work and certainly feel compelled to engage in that. And I look forward in the future to continue to be involved in pastoral ministry in various ways. But yeah, 26 years of pastoral ministry. Then back in 2017, January of 17, I announced that I was going to be running for state representative. There was an open seat. I felt compelled to do that. I was not anticipating that at all. And thankfully, as I was prayerfully considering the Lord's direction on that, I was able to see a win in 2018 for my first term and ended up serving in Missouri's House of Representatives for 6 years. And then that actually just came to an end in December 31 of 24. And I am now working for a nonprofit that works in the space of preserving and protecting constitutional liberties, in particular First Amendment, religious liberties, freedom of conscience, parental rights, and that even kind of translates over into issues regarding education for children. I think, if the other part of that question was what got me into the education space, I have always enjoyed the academic challenge. My wife accuses me of collecting degrees, and it's certainly not something I do for accolades. I enjoy that context. I enjoy being challenged to think. And after my undergrad, I did 3 masters and a doctorate. And I firmly believe in the value and importance of excellence in education. I believe in the classical purpose of education, and it's more than just merely career preparation, and career readiness. That certainly is a part of the importance of education, but the real purpose of education goes far beyond that. So I brought that with me into the legislature. Certainly pastoring families that had their children in public school, families that were homeschooling, families that had their children in private schools. And I see the value of all of them and the decisions that parents are making. And I celebrate the importance of parental involvement. They have a responsibility and a commensurate authority in that respect. And I found myself in the General Assembly and serving on the Budget Committee and serving on the Appropriations Committee for education, both higher ed as well as K through 12. And I began to see very quickly just how problem-ridden the bureaucratic element had become in terms of the way public education was being run. And that put me on this path of asking questions. I love asking questions. And it was, I believe, a consequential 6 years of working within the context of education policy and education funding. It was not always easy by any means, but it was very rewarding.
Yeah, well, love to hear that. That's awesome. It's funny because I have a few family members in ministry that are currently pastoring in churches or in a supportive role at a church, and I think they all went through seminary and they all one thing they always talked about was even through the years of schooling and, undergrad and master's and some PhD, once you're finished, you're never really finished. There's always more to learn, more to do. And so ministry can be tough. So I appreciate what you did there for so many years, and also what you did as a lawmaker. That could be extremely tough, I can imagine as well. So thank you so much for your service and the time you put into both pastoring and lawmaking. I do want to ask you a question about when you were a lawmaker for those 6 years. What were more of the general challenges that arise, and maybe some things even from the opposition that popped up that you weren't really expecting, that kind of took you by surprise? I know a lot of folks, and especially on our side of the movement, in lots of Christians, they see school choice as a no-brainer, that you can absolutely utilize this and it helps families. Lots of times, there's some folks who just don't get it or understand, and there may be challenges that arise. And so what were some of the things that you encountered in the legislature that were just generally surprising?
Yeah, well, there are a number of things that come to my mind. One, when we had hours upon hours of hearings regarding funding for public education, talking about educational outcomes in the K through 12 space, it was very common to hear people try to justify less than encouraging results, right? Trying to justify just the low educational outcomes. I was encouraging and certainly believe it to be correct to urge for excellence and to press for excellence. And yet there was always this quick statement regarding, well, just because we are less than proficient doesn't mean that we're not doing well. Right. And so they would be quick to do that. And then there was a number of reasons that would always be given. I mean, there's always this passing of the buck. When negative data would come out, it was never anyone's fault. Right. So I think the first was just the fact that the educational bureaucracy is very quick to circle the wagons and to give every reason under the sun why poor results are okay, and that it's not really their fault that those results are coming in the way that they are. Secondly, I quite frankly was put off by the fact that it is a fairly constant refrain coming from the educational establishment that they know what's best for children and parents don't. And I would speak with, and it's certainly not the case for everybody. We have to be quick to always acknowledge the fact there are great administrators out there, there are great teachers, great school board members. But I can tell you that it would take more than two hands to count the number of times I heard from a particular unique superintendent that would say something along the lines of, "Listen, I know what's best for these kids." And I would push back and say, "No, you don't. Their parents do." And they would then push back. And I would say, "What's the birth date? Give me the name of a kid and tell me their birth date. Give me the name of a kid and tell me what scares them in the middle of the night. Tell me the name of a kid and explain to me what they truly enjoy in life and what their aspirations and hopes are. You don't know, but let me tell you who does. Their parents." So this mindset of it's an elitist expert mindset. I mean, we're the experts. Sit down, be quiet, and listen to us. And what ultimately happens, the consequence of that is that they actually believe what they're saying. That leads them to policies that trample the rights and freedoms of parents. So that's the deal. And I think thirdly is just what tends to happen, and I'll leave it at this, is that they take the exceptional cases and they make them the norm, right? So they will quickly run to an example of a child who has been truly neglected and or harmed by the way in which that child's parents are caring for him or her. Then they will extrapolate from that this perspective that because that happens, we need to do this regarding every child. And that's a poor way to approach policy. There are ways within public policy that we can address those exceptional cases that are heartbreaking, but that in no way gives public schools or public education policy the freedom to run roughshod over 98% of the parents and treat them as though they are to be suspected for harming their children.
Yes, well, you're absolutely right. Parents do know best. One thing we do at EdChoice is polling and survey parents often. And what we see is, parents know what they want, and they want choices. They want options, and they're supportive of school choice programs, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they just want private school tuition. They want they want microschooling. They want homeschooling. Homeschooling's on the rise like crazy since COVID. And so parents want options, and they support those options. So second, segueing to sort of your role as a pastor, before, during, and after you were a lawmaker, I'd love to hear your opinion on why should churches be involved in the school choice movement, the parental rights movement, education freedom, if you want to be general. And second to that, specifically, how can pastors and leaders in the church engage in the policy process?
Sure. Well, I think we need to remember our rich heritage as Christians, the way in which churches have been directly involved in education, going well beyond the entry of public schools in our country. The Christian faith in Western civilization really was the impetus behind so much of the movement to have a well-educated populace. Everything from the higher education, the universities, the colleges in Europe and the UK, early in our founding era in our own country, there was this compulsion that Christians had to encourage and to find ways to help educate children with respect to what is good and right and commendable, to pursue the beautiful and to understand the world around them. There was this desire to pursue truth because Christians historically, and rightfully so, because it's a biblical concept, there's this compulsion to pursue truth because it's in truth that you find true liberty, not only for the soul in the gospel of Jesus Christ, but it's the truth that you see play out in life and in the way in which God has ordered and designed life itself and the family and relationships and industry. And the more your life comports with truth, then the better off you're going to be. Maybe not materially, but you're going to be better off because you're not working against the grain. So Christians have this very rich history and heritage when it comes to encouraging, supporting, and championing quality excellence in education. And I know I kind of doubled up on the adjective there, but it's there for a reason, right? And we want people to be educated well. And we've done that for a very long time. It's a little frustrating today because, and it's not just in our, current, decade or whatever that we've had conversations similar to this in Missouri, and we're starting to finally see EdChoice really taking root. But it's been around for a while. But the refrain is that Christians should stay out of the public arena. You shouldn't bring your faith into the public arena. Well, that's just nonsense. I don't care what religious stripe you happen to be up to, and including being an atheist. Everyone brings a religious understanding, perspective, worldview to bear when they're thinking about public policy and certainly education. So we have this rich heritage. We should celebrate that and continue to live that out for the good of others around us, even those who disagree with us. Quality education helps everyone.
Amen to that. I was actually reading an article yesterday, unrelated from education, but essentially the author said politics shouldn't be the main focal point of a Christian life, but that doesn't mean that politics can't be a part of a Christian life, right? It's just not the focal point. Christians should absolutely be involved in the public policy process, advocating for biblical values and things that they believe in. So, which leads me to the next question. So I've been talking a lot with pastors about sort of school models, right? As these programs get passed and expanded, our minds kind of automatically think about private Christian schools, which are wonderful, but you think about an actual school, it's most times attached to a church that's sponsored by the church, and kids go to school, they learn like a normal school model, which is awesome. But there's more to Christian-based education than that, right? You have microschooling, which is oftentimes churches just lending their space to these small, focused school models that former teachers and parents can use and have their own micro school. Same to the same tune, homeschool co-ops, allowing homeschool families to create this co-op and use facilities from the church to do that, and incorporating some type of church faith-based initiative, whether that's just Bible studies or church history or whatever it may be. There's many models that are now pretty common that once these programs get passed or expanded in states, it's really easy to adopt. It's so customizable, which is really, really cool. And so my actual question is, as a former lawmaker, as a former pastor, what would be, who's pretty fluent on this issue, what would be your advice for those pastors and those church leaders who are on the fence, who are thinking about jumping into the education ministry, but maybe just don't know what to do or have questions? What is your advice to them?
Well, it's important. It's important to consider engaging to the degree that you possibly can. And certainly that goes all the way up to starting and opening up your own private school as a congregation, right? I think that the fundamental factor that pastors can prayerfully consider, we as pastors know the importance of evangelism and discipleship, right? They both go hand in hand. Well, discipleship, it involves more than teaching someone how to properly study the Bible. Because if you're dealing with people who have not been adequately educated, or kids that are still way behind in terms of their ability to read, they're way below their grade level reading capacities and things of that nature. When you have an opportunity as a church to lean into the space of helping to educate children, you're actually helping your discipleship mission be accomplished, right? To teach people more about the faith, about the work of Christ, the person of Christ, and the way that we are to live our lives differently because of him. It does have a level of assumption built into that we need people who can read well and well enough to be able to look at a text, read it, and read it with comprehension well enough to understand what it's saying and what that means in their practice, right? So as churches have an opportunity to lean into that space, this really does work very well with their discipleship mission as a congregation. I would say that for me, the church I just stepped down from, my wife and I are hoping to be able to re-engage as active participating members once they find my replacement. But I was there for almost 20 years, and one of the things that we had begun to pray about, they had actually operated a Christian school prior to my arrival, had closed about 20 years prior almost, and we were looking at trying to find ways to adequately support and encourage parents as they were desiring to prayerfully support their children's education, wherever that may be. I mean, for those families that choose to have their children enrolled in a public school, how can we come alongside of them and encourage them in that? Because it's just difficult, in today's context. And so what we ended up deciding to do, and we kicked this off a year prior to my departure nearly, we went ahead and went the route of working with the homeschool co-op that was going to be working to launch a micro school. And that micro school hybrid, it was going to be a hybrid scenario where, they would be at home as homeschool students typically are, but then they would come together like 3 times a week. And then there would be coursework that other families could choose to enroll their children in, and yet they may not be there as frequently as others. So they were trying to work in a context where they would provide an educational option that pursued excellence, but was tailored in a way that had flexibility for families. I was so delighted to see that launch, and I pray that they continue to see success.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's great. Well, we're coming up on time. Dr. Ritchie, thank you so much, not only for your time today, but what you've done the last 20 years in pastoral ministry, lawmaking. You've been a huge supporter of school choice, and I thank you so much for that. But I do want to leave you, Dr. Ritchie, with the last word. I don't want people to hear me last. So, Dr. Ritchie, we've talked a little bit about your advice to pastors and churches who may be on the fence, but speaking more generally, you giving your advice to the faith community, to pastors and churches, just with education reform in general, what would you say? What is your last word on this?
I would say to fellow pastors that it is a good thing to consider and to pray about engaging this topic of education choice, education freedom, finding ways to encourage and come alongside of parents as they're trying to do what's right for their own children. There are many states like Missouri where we're seeing tremendous movement in the education choice front with things like ESAs, which are wonderful tools to be able to provide additional support to families. We all know the financial and economic challenges that everyone's experiencing right now, and most of our families today are dual income families, and certainly we have a large percentage of families even within the church that are single parent households where a single parent is actually working multiple jobs. So the idea of trying to give a child the best possible opportunity for a quality education sometimes does exist outside of a public school, and that does bring cost. So these ESA programs are tremendous opportunities, and pastors could encourage their congregations. Listen, this is an opportunity for you to be a support and a ministry to these families. You can contribute to an ESA program, and you get a tax credit for that. That's private money going to a private entity that's providing scholarships to families that are pursuing private education for their children. And it's just a wonderful vehicle. So I think it's just, pastors, we should be engaging in this space. We should be finding ways so that children can be exposed as much as possible to what is true and what is right and good and excellent, and helps to set them up for a productive life as an adult that hopefully will bring blessing to future generations.
Well, amen to that. Dr. Ritchie, again, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate you so much. Again, this is Sunday School Choice, where faith meets education freedom. My name is Nathan Sanders, and we were joined by Dr. Doug Ritchie today. Thank you so much for your time.